Hello, everybody. Back for day 2 of the hardware week. The other day we kind of listed out some parts and then took those machines apart. Made sure everybody could identify. So you see, there's not one. We saw the other day. There's not one unique way to put the machines together. They're similar pieces, similar structure, but a wide variety of things. Some of the stuff we'll look at today. As far as hardware goes, is kind of similar, sort of a drastically different approach to it. Got a few things on the agenda for today relating to the other assignments this week. So on the hardware, there's those foundational skills. I always call it the things that your teachers are going to want to take for granted in every one of your other classes. And this week it's slide decks, and that's going to show up in pretty much every class. At some point, you'll have to put together a presentation, PowerPoint, Keynote, slide. Just like the others, I have lots of computers. I try to make sure I have all the systems going. That way, if somebody asks a question, if I'm a Mac user, I can pull up and I can address that, or pull up the Windows machine and use the same machine and address the computers. So whichever one you prefer. The instructions, I generalized it because other instructors use the same course shell I put together. But whichever slide deck software you normally use to put together a presentation is fine. Those, and then also a term paper this semester. Everybody see that assignment on there? I started looking at that and then quick pass it some presentation stuff. Just like Word documents, I have a feeling pretty much everybody's used that at some point. I don't think you can get through high school anymore without putting a slide deck or two together. Other uses for them. And you know, a little story. One thing I'll point out in my game development classes. You can use other software for that. Great for game engines because things like animation and sound. And what is would be very trivial in a game, it will make it every way amazing for the presentation. So there's more than one use, but we'll be looking at the just standard software for that this week. And again, there's a checklist I'll go on. So I think there's some instructions there, but you might be better off just to and look at the checklist I'll be looking for and make sure all the stuff on that checklist is in there. So let's start with the So a big project over the semester, research on you'll pick a topic and then you'll write a paper and do a presentation on it. Same material, doesn't have to be different things, and the paper you'll submit to me. Actually, I guess both of them get submitted, and the presentation will be shared in the discussion board in Module 8, so that is for your classmates. So in Module 2, there are, I think, like 30 suggested topics here. First glance, you'll notice there's a lot of question marks on that. So if you have a topic in mind, try to look through, phrase it in the form of a question, and then you'll do your research to answer that question. Kind of surrounding that, look through here. Kind of first come, first served basis. There's 7 people in the course and 30 topics. So it's probably not going to be overlap, but whenever somebody submits the topic they want to write on, I'm in here with the highlighters. For some reason, Cambridge projects don't have structured text. But I'm in here with a highlighter, and when I highlight one, that's like crossing it off the list. So first come, first served basis, but in like the online classes where there's 25 students and 30 suggested topics, that makes a much bigger difference. Then there's 7 people in the class. We go look through there, a paper, and then put a presentation together for it. And the thing about the presentation, we might heading into a cybersecurity field, hopefully make a lot of sense. You might be glad to see this as far as security concerns. One of the biggest security concerns is downloading things. It's blocked in a lot of places, and on the discussion boards, why did that not load up? On the discussion boards, a lot of people, when there's something like push your PowerPoint presentation in the discussion board, they'll just upload, they'll just attach that file, which means your classmates have to download it to view it. So for our discussion board here, and if you have other classes with me, I always do this in all the classes. If you're gonna post something like that in the discussion board, make sure it's visible, which basically means use the embed button instead of the attach button. I think I deactivated that last year when they added an update where it can deactivate attachments. So it's like steps towards more secure, but it's something you need to be used to anyway. How do you get files to other coworkers, friends, relatives? How do you get the files to them when in general that considered a security risk? So most ways you try to transmit those files, you're going to hit security firewalls along the way. So it's good practice for that, but make sure it's visible without downloading a file. That's still a long way away. That's doing module 8. That's the module 8 discussion board. So you have the whole semester to work on that. Go turn in your topic now. I think next week you'll turn in a list of the first 5 or 6 resources you find to places with good information. And a week or two after that, you'll turn in an outline. And on that, there's also a requirement to go talk to a tutor about it. Have a tutor sign off that you talk to them about it. Which a big part of that isn't necessarily to the formatting on an outline, to make sure everybody knows where the tutoring's at. This is most people's first semester, and there's lots of help available for lots of all the subjects around here. I usually do a couple hours in the tutoring lab. The former dean for school of ID is in there. Other people that know technology is in there, so there's help for most of the IT classes as well. Writing and math are kind of givens in any tutoring center. Sciences, but there's help for lots and lots of stuff. So just like the foundational skills, make sure everybody knows where the tutors are at, which we are in a temporary location right now. It's in G8, right next to the academic advisory office. It's in that front hall. If you go into the big glass wall up front on the door there and go down the tall hallway, it's one of the rooms on the right. While we're waiting on new fire doors, the remodeling's done. What used to be the library, the big corner that faces the interstate and kind of looks nice because that's what people driving by see. We're in the very front corner. Tutors are normally in the very front corner in the room that looks like a greenhouse. There's windows all the way around. So nice. It's a really nice place to study. But the fire doors were delayed and can't have people in there until the fire doors come in. It should be this month, but it might be the fall semester before we move in there. Oh yeah, and with embedding this, there's another one here. I'll point, since I already have the discussion board open, I'll point out it here as soon as I get the Zoom pictures out of the way. So all the formatting stuff, normal like discussion boards, we also have this plugin little option. So there's more stuff we can do. I'll click view all. That was one I wanted. Quite a few apps that you can use to connect things to discussion boards. The one for the presentation that goes with your topic, kind of my recommendation. It's not a requirement. If you want to like print those as get images of all the slides and throw them on there, that'd be fine. But since it's a presentation, actually giving that presentation would be a nice way to share it with classmates. And there's recording software, screen capture recording software built right into Ivy Learn. So this one's Studio. So I'm getting ready to look at the button. I usually do that first, but this was already open. After you record a video, you can come over here and just embed things right from there. So you click on here and just select whatever video it is. The media tabs, whenever you go to embed it, that allows for comments and things like that. Since it's going into discussion board, there's a spot for comments anyway, so probably turn that off. And then just hit the embed button and the video will show up right there in there. Video was getting ready for summer camp, showing high schooler game development, summer camp thing. And had to try to take what I normally do in 2 semesters of game development classes and try to make it fit in 1 week. It's 3 hours a day, 5 days, so it's still a lot of hours that week. But yeah, I have to actually make some videos to test how much can actually fit in a week. And then if you go over the green navigation pads on the left, on the bottom, you'll see Studio. And right here's the record button. The first time you hit it, it will install some software. Let me get Zoom pictures out of the way. This record button, the first time you hit it, it'll download the software, download the installer, then you come back and hit it again. Then every time after that, it'll just start the recording. Just hit that, it'll start the recording, which I can't do because Zoom has the microphone and the camera occupied right now. So it just shows a big error message, but when it starts, then some controls and settings will show up down in the bottom left. I'm gonna play around with it a little, and then actually I think about it. Yeah, so you can do screen captures or webcam. And if you go to screen capture, obviously there's the option where you can put the little webcam in there. Everybody's seen videos like that before. That would, since you're sharing a presentation with your classmates, that would kind of be my recommendation is just record yourself giving the presentation. And then you can embed it right there. That's a quick, easy way to do that. It's a Screencast-O-Matic software, which is a very popular one. They have a free version that has a lot of options, puts a watermark on there, and then they have a paid-for version that doesn't do the watermark and has a lot more options, functionality. It's the paid-for version. So it's a really nice one too. You can record quite a bit depending on your computer's capabilities. It might be useful in a few classes, not just this one, but that would be my recommendation for the presentation. But really the requirements when we get to that point is just make sure they don't have to download a file in order to see it. Is picking a topic. So look through that list. Oh, stuff didn't really load. That's weird. Every is only like halfway loading the pages. Yeah, so look through that list of 30 topics, see if there's any you like, or if there's something else you have in mind, just send it to me and I will approve it. And in last Saturday's update on Ivy Learn, they finally got me emojis in the gradebook button. So you'll probably get a thumbs up because I usually write sentences there, but now that there's emojis, that seems like a better way to approve or turn down projects or something. But I was excited to see those show up because they're part of our language. If you haven't seen it, the SEC did pass regulations this past spring that include emojis. So sending certain emojis can show up and be held against you in a court of law now. In particular, if you like run a company and send somebody a rocket emoji, that is definitely evidence in an insider trading trial as of April, I think. That's pretty straightforward. The other one is presentation software, slide decks. Again, I have lots of different systems, and if you normally use one that I don't have, I can do it. Canva, I have a Canva account because I have to do some stuff on. I have to do that for the completion guides. Y'all get completion guides when you're started, or a copy of them. See a copy of it. This sounds like the whole way through school, a recommended path, and to take the courses in, what's going to be running here at our campus versus which ones have to be taken online. A big thing, but somebody decided it needed to be made in Canva. I'm not a big fan of that software, but I have an account. So if you want to do your presentations in Canva, which is a big step up from PowerPoint or Keynote, you can do some really, really, really nice stuff there. That would work. But whatever one you normally use, if I don't have it on if I don't already have the software, I should probably familiarize myself with it. So don't worry about going like Like if you're a Mac user and go with Keynote, you don't have to worry about switching it to a PowerPoint file or downloading a PowerPoint file. I'm normally a Google Docs user, so I'm just going to jump over to slides. Docs/slides. The presentation. Oh, I can't remember the address. Let's go to the button. Talk about a couple points on here. First off is no matter which software you're using, there's going to be a blank presentation button. But nobody wants to look at black letters on a white background. That's never a good presentation. So probably choose a theme quickly. I guess the things we looked at the other day with Google Docs, it's not the only one now because there's Office 365 online. Kind of had to do a similar thing. By nature, it's designed to be transmitted across the internet. So there's a lot of functionality that it's unlikely that people are going to need. So we don't need to waste time transmitting that across the internet. Just send the base functionality that people can turn on, and they give them checkboxes or something so people can turn on the other ones if they want. So there's a lot more functionality if you go over to the add-ons, get add-ons, search through the things, find different things. There's a lot of stuff show up with AI showing up, and that's probably going to be very useful in slide decks. I haven't messed around with it too much. We could choose a theme. You might want to look through there. One of the biggest things, along with that theme, or if you want to start with just a completely white one and make your own, you might want to still do some customizations. Even if you're not starting from a blank slate and designing it yourself, pull this in and maybe you're doing a presentation for Ivy Tech and chose this, then that's very different than our school colors, right? Probably look a lot better if there was something at least close to the school colors. And it's in different spots on all of them. I think it's under format. You do usually have to do it when nothing's selected. They just changed the button. It used to say master slide or slide master, something like that. Now it says edit theme, which is much better. Makes it a lot clearer what it is. But all of them have that. Something about the primary slide. It was primary slide. I think LibreOffice says primary slide, or some of them look like templates, but there'll be something that kind of controls all the themes. You might want to go in there, and here you can see all the different slides that come with it, and go in here and just adjust these things one at a time. Like on this one, probably change the color, change the shape or the color. I don't see color on that list. That's odd. So how to go out of there? Slide, edit the theme. We do have to go through the change shape. Well, that's really weird. I was going to use color as an example, and I don't see a color option. I guess it's just a regular paint can. Ivy Tech has green colors, so I'll switch that. At least one of them to green. Grab the word, switch that to some sort of serif, some font with a serif. I'll answer something like this. You can come through, change what the bulleted lists are. So that'd be something we can look at. Oh, where's the button? Make all the bulleted lists the diamonds and arrows instead of those, and start to change some things there, maybe the color of them. Oh, and that's another thing. Notice all the buttons are, if you regularly use Google Docs, you'll notice here all the buttons are in a different spot for some reason. No idea why they did that. They had to put effort into moving the buttons. It's like, let's change the order, make it extra difficult for some reason. Oh, maybe a light green there, and oh, I don't know, maybe I'll just go Christmas colors, red there. Yeah. So some colors so we can see the difference. Maybe the same thing here. Maybe not necessarily every single slide you go through that you have, but at least the ones you're going to use. Customize them a little, make it fit the situation. We're going to talk about graphical representation soon, and color is kind of a big deal when we get there. You know, color has a big effect on people. All of this stuff does. So like the fonts, the sharp edges versus smooth curves, things like that. Serifs and or non-serifs. Sans serif is the little flags at the end of the letter. If you don't know that word, I guess I can put a picture on the board. So, like a letter T's, serif would be just the basic. Sans serif would be just the basic letter itself. And we can add little flags on there to decorate it up a little. Still looks like a T, but it just looks a little bit better. Add some contrast. The little things like that make a big difference in people. Not as much as color did. Color theory really affects people a lot. Shows up in presentations. I guess I'd go ahead and throw a word out or a point on it. Since we're already talking about it. Y'all probably heard about the red and yellow thing, right? Like all the fast food places, most of them, their logos are use reds and yellows because those colors make people hungry. So, or hungry people respond better to the colors red and yellow. So if you're giving a big presentation right before lunch, and you know it's going to happen right before lunch, everybody's going to be hungry. Throwing lots of reds and yellows, and then the people watching your presentation will see it a little bit, or they'll just naturally take to it a little bit better because of the color. We'll talk about that some more later in the semester. Has a lot of effect on people. It can be used both ways. Can influence things, nudge people one way or another, just with subtleties like that. And even if you're never going to do that, you still want to know about it to watch out for it. Watch out for when people are trying to influence your opinion on a presentation. So that stuff does show up, but it's knowledge. We'll talk about that later. I think around week 6 is when it's in the plan. I have to pull the list out to see for certain. So you can see changed it here. We got start adding the slides in. It's only changed for one other one, but anytime we add a slide like this, we get that other template. You usually want to do that. All of your software for it's going to have something fairly straightforward. Insert pictures, text. I guess one thing that would be different, sort of blank slide, some close to blank. If you haven't used it much before, there's not necessarily a spot to type already. Like when you open a Word document or spreadsheet, everything's there, right? Just jump in and start typing. So you do need to like add in text boxes, the little box up here with the T, or that's kind of a standard icon. So it'll be a very similar thing, kind of like the save button. There's slight variances, but you'll see a box with the corners marked and the T in it for the text box, and that's where the text goes in. Where to go? Text goes here. Probably not in that color, or maybe highlighted something so we can see. Oh, that's not what I meant to highlight. This highlighter probably. Insert pictures, shapes. I don't know if I have any pictures. So web for landscape. You put all the pieces together, animations to make a move. Click the animate button. Here, unclick, or fly up to the left on the click. Then when we run the presentation, which should go from the beginning here. What? So not the presentation button. Oh, that's the meeting button. Oh, this one. Start from the beginning. Click through our slide deck, give the presentation, and then for your final presentation, you just kind of talk along the way. And the pictures you got, then little animations, little things. Transitions, I think, are another big important part. That's one of the ones on that checklist, because we're looking at this slide, and then suddenly we're looking at this slide. And if the presentation gets long, people are going to get really tired of that stuff in between pretty quickly. So little animations and things like that go big ways. So I'll just put one on the first one, the transition. All of the software defaults to none. And if you're on Google Docs or like Office 365 online, there'll be some on the list, but if you're on the web, there's a lot more options. So look for the search the web button for the good transitions. Slide from left, that'll work. Oh, did it not transition? Maybe in this one. Oh, that's why. I'll go with flip, apply it to all the slides. Basics, I think everybody's probably seen this before, right? There's little bits of animation and things to break up what's going on there. And one of the biggest things for presentations is don't write an essay in the presentation. Short, brief notes. Typically, the presentation accompanies a speaker. So you would say everything. And if you put lots of words there, you'll surely notice this because everybody does it. You do the same thing when somebody's presenting. If there's lots of words on the slide, you're going to read those words and ignore the speaker for a minute. Another thing that can be used advantageously or disadvantageously, sometimes that might be what you want to happen. Usually not. The fewer the words, the better. I've heard different ways to say it. I've heard kind of the same thing as a rule of 5 or a rule of 7. And no more than, I'll go with 5. No more than 5 bullet points and 5 words per bullet point. So that would be nice and short. So most people could read that, and by the time you finish saying the first sentence, because you're the one giving the information, and minimize that. There are certain styles. One of my preferred ways is to follow saying the picture's worth 1,000 words. So this particular slides that accompany the presentation will have a header for the slide, and then pictures that go with what's being said, and no other words whatsoever. The only words go in the header, and just little things, maybe graphs and charts, things to point at. But the more words you put into the presentation, the more people are going to ignore it. Hopefully everybody's familiar with that, because you probably set through presentations and read what's on the slide deck, and then realize you're not paying attention to the person talking and they're saying something completely different. Or this isn't a speech class, but y'all have probably set through the other extreme too, where people put the script into the slide deck and they're standing there reading from the presentation. And most of us talk slower than we read. So for most of the time, you're sitting there thinking, yeah, I already read that. I don't need to hear. You finish reading and the person's still talking about it. You already heard it when they read it. So your script goes in the notes pane. So like scripts go down here. This might still share okay. And then when you go to present it, usually we have more than one monitor available in our environment, right? Like right now, I just have the one monitor sharing on the screen up there on the two different ones. If we go to presenter view, oh good, it did still kind of split it up. It tried to put it on a second monitor by default. There's something for the speaker to see and something else for the audience to see. And the stuff in your notes pane will show up over here. That's consistent in all the slide deck software. So put your script there. Don't show the audience your script. Y'all have sat through those presentations before. You know how boring it is. Try to make it interesting, right? You can be standing, think about what the slide decks would normally be used for. You're standing in front of a group of people, conveying some information to them, and you could get all of that across just by talking. The presentation is to make it more interesting. So highlights and accents on the things you're going to be talking. Always keep that in mind when you're giving a presentation. I think those are my 4 points. Does anybody have any questions about presentation software? Pretty straightforward. Again, it's one of the things that I think we're coming on the time that most everybody has seen it somewhere along the way. If you have any questions, let me know. And when you do the assignment, my recommendation would probably be, there's some instructions there, but I would recommend going through the rubric, read through the instructions, but open up the rubric, because I'm going to use that as a checklist when I do the grading. So just kind of make sure everything can be checked off there. I think the one for this week's assignment is like a hobby or something you're interested in, something you like. Just put together 5 or 7 slides, some animations, notes, things like that. Yeah, I have a second set of notes here that kind of zip through really quick. It has a lot of the same information as what we went over the other day. It's notes from a different time I gave the lecture. Got this last many times. The normal list, the control unit, which has our clock, the ALU, arithmetic logic unit, floating point unit, registers, all those built into that chip, the RAM, which and it goes with CPU. RAM is useless without a CPU, and CPU is useless without RAM. Our volatile storage, temporary things, it's only gonna, with RAM and ROM and registers, it's only gonna remember it until the power is removed. RAM and registers are very similar. RAM holds the current program, and registers hold the current step in the current instruction from that program. A counter, I think I left that off the other day. An instruction counter to tell which instruction we're on, goes with the clock, synchronizes everything. It's not a timekeeping clock. It doesn't even have to be a steady pulse. It just sends out pulses so that everything knows to happen at the same time. Arithmetic logic unit and floating point unit are what actually does the processing, just like our numbers we're familiar with. So 723.45, make up a couple numbers. Ones, tens, hundreds. Our whole numbers get larger as we go right to left. Tenths, hundreds, thousands, 10,000s. Our fractional numbers gets technically it's smaller, but we have the bigger word as we move left to right. That's why we have 2 of them. The ALU does the whole number part, and the arithmetic logic unit does the whole number part, and the floating point unit does the fractional part. Same sort of circuit, they're just reversed from each other to keep everything organized. So those pieces. The other day we took some computers apart, stuff about the registers. A bus, I think that was mentioned the other day. Bus is a communication system that transfers data between components. Usually parallel buses are used for internal And serial buses are used for external. Parallel means multiple lines. So if we had this data, 0, 1, 0, 0, what is that? 4, 72, 74, 75. Wait, so the number 75. We want to transfer this. So we got these 8 bits. We're going to talk about that next Tuesday. We'll go over what binary is if you haven't seen that before, how to read that. Because the class where that's actually a major learning objective, over the years, people keep adding more and more learning objectives to it because another one that everybody has to take. And there is so much shoved into that, there's not much time to focus on that. And the one where you're heading to IT, you're going to encounter binary. Because that's what these are, they're binary state machines. But we have the number 75. That's how we write that. We'll talk about how we get there next week. We need to transfer that, and there's 2 ways we can do that. We know it's going down a wire, right? So we have 8 bits. So we could just set up 8 wires, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and send a different bit down each wire. 0, 0, 1, 0, 1, 1. Every wire gets its own bit. It's nice and quick, and hopefully from the picture you can see why it gets the name parallel. All the wires are in parallel. Each one only has 1 bit. Alternatively, is serial, where we could just send everything down a wire. Typically, when we diagram it, we write put the diagram like the inside of the wire and 0, 1, 0, 0, 1, 0, 1, 1. And we write the bits there. If you're looking at that in the picture, it's like the light switch. It's either on or off the whole way across the wire. We don't have segments of the wire that we turn it on. Then at the next clock pulse or whatever, it's still on. Then we turn it off at the next clock pulse, on at the next one, off. So it's kind of like flipping a light switch, and that whole wire has that. But in order to convey information, we usually write it out like that. Maybe put it on top of a wire. Usually parallel communication, a parallel bus is used internal, like on the motherboard, or maybe from the motherboard to the side of the tower where it's still in the same case, and so things aren't going to get wiggled around. But that could lead to a lot of wires to plug up. This would be an 8-bit machine. The bits refer to the size of the bus, which would also match the size of the registers. So the bus kit would connect to register sizes. So typically, typically these days we would have 64 bits each one of in our registers, and those are connected by 64 parallel wires. But that's fine internally when it happens at the factory, probably stamped on there with the machines. All the engineer really did was draw a picture of those wires and sent it to the person that made the machine. Plugging that up, so like connecting an external device, like my little pin thing, like my little pin here, or really the pad's what plugs in. Connecting that would be kind of a challenge with the number of bits that need to transfer. This particular pin, I do a lot of graphic stuff, so I did go ahead and buy a nicer one, not just the cheapest ones just to write with. So all of them are coming down as 64-bit numbers. So the clicker on my pin, got 2 buttons here and 3 more buttons on the pad. Those are all 64-bit numbers. The X and Y coordinates of where the pin's located, but also the Z coordinates, because the pin, this sort of pin, it moves the position around and then writes when it actually touches the thing. So it needs X, Y, and Z coordinates, 64 bits for each one. That's a lot of data that needs to transfer down there. And I lost count, but that would be a lot of wires to plug up. So we use universal serial busing. 1 wire and then the clock, the thing that synchronizes everything, just decides how long each bit gets to go down that wire. And a diagram like this, but remember, it's like the light switch. It's on or off. You flip it on, and then a certain amount of computer's going to measure what it is, and a certain amount of time later, the computer's going to take the next measurement. So flip it on or off by that next time. A lot easier for external devices. There are still some, I don't think we have any VGA cables up here. Oh, we do have VGA cables. So for those in the classroom, on the computers sitting in front of, we still have some VGA cables plugged up here. That's about the only place we see them. So we have all the different wires inside of there, because obviously this can be a lot quicker. Well, this is 8 bits. It's just in 8 bits. It's a lot quicker to send it down 8 lines than 1 line. So we can do this in 1 click, 1 tick of our clock. This one requires at least 9 ticks of our clock. So we have to have that outside. We started over here, so we have to tick to get into it, and then tick to get past that last one so we can tell what it is. So obviously it's a lot quicker, and monitors use a lot of that. So HDMI, those are on the KVM switches. Oh, by the way, we're talking about hardware. These little things sitting in front of y'all on this, these are what's called KVM switches, keyboard, video, and mouse. So if you brought your laptop, I see a couple laptops sitting out, you can plug up your, just plug that into your laptop, and then the monitor, keyboard, and mouse here will extend from your laptop. And then the switch turns them on and off. So also, these are more sensitive and don't have any sort of indicator lights. Or if you're in the GRE lab and your computer suddenly goes blank, or you sit down with blank and it looks like it's powered off, try hitting that button. Make sure it's not set to be like a second monitor for a mouse, or a second monitor for a laptop. So those are there for, yeah, HDMI. You have the number of pins in there. You can see there's lots of different connections. Parallel shows up sometimes because it's faster, especially on screens. We'll want it to be faster. But generally for external stuff, we use serial communication. And in the modern world, that's always USB. That's, I guess it's KVM, which still has the old style serial communication. Oh, I saw the green and the pink and was expecting it to be the old PS1 connections, but it looks like it's headphone and microphone, which those are also parallel. By the way, because think about a speaker, it has to move in and out. We can't really do that with one signal. It wouldn't work on a clock. Think about a sound wave going through a clock. The clock would have to be different for every sound we wanted to play. So that one, by necessity, audio is forced to be parallel communication, but it only needs to. So, I'm sure going back there. ROM and RAM, I mentioned RAM, random access memory. That's our working storage. It's connected directly to the CPU. When the program is running, the values that the program needs are there. Is it next week? Next week, we're going to look at databases. And one thing well, there's different points that might show up about it, but whatever you find confusing about databases probably falls back to the point that we are working directly on storage, not in memory with the database. So some things behave differently. Like the lab next week is using Microsoft Access to introduce them. And for some reason, Microsoft put an undo button, but it doesn't undo anything because we're not in RAM where we can get back to the last instruction we're in. working storage. So if we change it, it's changed. It's changed on the hard drive. And the old one is long gone. So things like the undo button don't work in databases because we're on permanent storage. We're working in permanent storage. ROM read-only memory is similar. It's usually a non-volatile thing, holds so kind of like long-term storage. So it will hold instruction. But it holds instructions like RAM. It's usually a lot smaller than like a small chip instead of the big hard, because it just has the most basic boot up instructions. The first couple of boot up instructions, things like telling it where the hard drive is located so it can grab the rest of the boot up instructions. Those key starting points. And we still refer to it as ROM for read-only memory. But by 1983, pretty much every computer was using some sort of PROM, programmable read-only memory, because we want to be able to change them. A few have come out over the years. Nowadays, it's probably all EEPROM, electronically erasable, programmable read-only memory. For a long time, the light erasable was more common because it was decided that was a lot safer. If in order to erase and reprogram your ROM chip, you actually had to open up the machine and shine a laser on it or a flashlight or something, as opposed to give it an electrical signal because it's an electrical device. There's lots of electrical signals, so things can go wrong there. But over the years, that's kind of those have improved, and it's just a lot easier to use electronically erasable. Talk about heat sinks and cooling fans, because electricity does create heat, and that's a big deal. I like to think about toasters, because toasters aren't regulated. Your stove, a lot of other space heaters, those things are regulated, so they heat up kind of slowly. So especially like a stove top, there's time to move stuff. You can turn the knob and then move things away from it, and it takes a moment to heat up. But your toaster will leave a blister in a millisecond or two because it's enclosed, so there's no need to regulate that. Heating things up with electricity is easy. Cooling them down is a lot harder. So the early computers you hear about being the size of a house. All of those other pieces were never bigger than about the size of a desk, even the earliest days with the large vacuum tubes and stuff. It was the radiator that was the size of a house because it takes a lot to cool it down. And unlike a car radiator, you don't have the movement to add to help with it. So it took even bigger, took massive radiators, which disappeared for a while, and then it was mostly heat sinks and fans. But liquid cooling has come back. The radiators, especially for gaming, because a lot of game engines, a lot of people's gaming computers will get very, very, very hot, and for prolonged periods of time too. It's not like it just heats up and then you move on to something else. A lot of people they're running an intensive game for several hours long straight. So radiators or liquid cooling have come back in a big way, but something to cool it off is very, very important. Lots of things like that. Peripherals, we kind of need those because we need to see what's happening. Next week, we're getting started into the data, and the following week, talking about software, which will translate that into the raw data in human readable form. I do switch back and forth between that word. I mentioned that already. There's often confusion when people are starting out about the proper pronunciation of that. It's a Latin word. We still use it the same way the Romans did. So technically data would be correct. But because when the computers took over the modern world, the very, very popular Star Trek character, people were saying got used to saying the name of a popular Star Trek character right before that became a common word in American English and British English. It's all of the English speaking countries, and as well as every other language in the world. So Both the pronunciations are correct. I tend to use both of them in class, and whichever one people will know what you're talking about. But it is a Latin word, and we still use it the same way as far as the little technicalities on it. Peripherals, yeah, some sort of input, output, screens for output, printers, speakers for audio, light shows, water features are nice. We're gonna look at some small controller devices after a break, and those will become very popular because, like a waterfall, gravity's gonna pull it on its own. So if we have a computer opening and closing gates at a certain time, we can control the flow of how it falls and making these nice little waterfall for an output. All sorts of things, the keyboard, the mouse. One of my favorite hobbies is to try to make new input devices. Or modify input devices. One that I've been working on for a while, a motion capture suit to control a synthesizer instead of an animation. Paintbrushes to way around in the air. Location sensors. I should have brought it. I have a thing on my, it's like, it's bigger than it needs to be, but strapped on my wrist that has a joystick to control the mouse, joystick and buttons for the mouse, a knob to spin, a few extra buttons for keyboard things, and it uses the 433 megahertz, which is a walkie-talkie signal. So it's for a classroom. It's normal USB, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi. Most of our devices are probably already using some of them. It's like, oh, the walkie-talkie signal is empty, and then that's so that I can walk over around the classroom, and no matter where I'm at it, over on this side of the board, I still have the mouse control for the computer right there on me. Just making new input devices. That's one of my favorite things to do. So there's lots of those. I want to put a quick diagram here, a very rough diagram. So the day we took a couple machines apart, desktop power, server. I had a laptop that we took apart last semester. I'm going to erase this if that's okay. I think there was a phone circuit board, and looked and saw how those same pieces are on all those different form factors. And that's the question on the quiz this week. Form factor refers to the shape of the case. A laptop's a clamshell. A tablet is a slate, like a slate board. Power's kind of obvious, but the general form factor, we have to adjust how it goes. But when we're conveying information, we need diagrams, schematics, things like that. So those do get modified. We'll probably have that precise picture, but you'll want to find an easier to follow one. So somewhere in there's going to be our CPU and RAM, which almost should be the same piece, but the reason they're not is we keep it really, really easy to change RAM. Nothing else in the CPU needs modified. So RAM was pulled out and kept to the side so that it's really, really easy to take it out and put in bigger RAM. Usually bigger, I guess technically you could put in smaller RAM, but probably only in an emergency when the RAM goes bad and the only one you have is smaller. But and those are going to be connected on a bus, which I'll draw as like a big arrow here. Oh, I can draw an arrow. So we have the bus connecting those, and somewhere nearby is going to be a bunch of registers. That are all connected kind of on a bus as well. I'll just draw it like this. Maybe not. I was thinking that might look clearer, but the bus is going to feed directly into them. So I'm going to draw it with some overlap here. So it's a 8-bit computer. That's what those videos I sent out the other day where that guy Ben Eater, he sits down, he makes it from scratch. I would highly recommend watching those, even if you're not going to do it. He talks slow, so I watched every single one and followed along at double speed. And he's built an 8-bit computer, explaining every step along the way. And the only difference between an 8-bit computer and a 64-bit computer is there's 8 times as much of the same thing. There's not different logic running it. There's different architectures. He does a rather simple architecture to get the concept across. And in the modern world, we'd probably be using ARM or RISC. There's certain standardizations, but a lot of things give the idea. Those videos are there and kind of this setup. So he connects the RAM, goes through the bus line to connect all of it to the registers and back to the, really he's building a CPU. So he puts the control unit, the arithmetic logic unit. I think he only did whole numbers in the video, trying to keep it simple for explanation purposes. The clock, the instruction counter, all of that stuff just built up from scratch. So a really neat one to watch. Then we get into some diagramming parts. So like a power supply, we saw that. We're going to draw it like this for pictures. Got a big box with those 2 little plugs that would go in the wall, something like that. And all this would go on our motherboard. We saw when we took them apart the other day, on every single one of those machines we took apart, the cooling system was directly on the CPU, right? You have to move the fan out of the way to get to the CPU. But that wouldn't be helpful in an information schematic. So we put the fan off to the side somewhere, maybe down here. Have some sort of fan to cool it and to convey information. So our diagram doesn't have to be an exact match of the layout. Actually, the exact match would be kind of part, the diagram would become useless. So spread it out and things like this to convey information. That's the critical part. So all of this would be internal. So sort of the motherboard or directly connected to the motherboard. Inside the case somewhere. And the motherboard refers to the circuit board everything's soldered onto or screwed onto, or like the power supply plugs into. The thing that connects all the stuff's connected to. Then coming out, maybe some of the registers, there's a big, can be a monitor. I'll just do a regular thing. RAM might have to come through serial to get to RAM, but then somewhere is storage. And a lot of these pictures I'm making up, I'm going to draw this for the storage. There are standardized symbols for all of these things. Something called unified modeling language. Our modern world is very connected, interconnected. It's a global thing. We don't all speak the same language, but we need to communicate. So there is an international standard of communication for technology. It's called Unified Modeling Language, or UML. It's a pictorial-based language. And we, so right now, or I guess 13 hours ago, people in China were learning some of the same standard diagrams. Probably a bad example, they would speak English too. They would also have to sit there in English that stuff. But yeah, people in Central Africa, people in China, students in Moscow, they're all learning the same standard symbols. Obviously, some fields of IT do a lot more international communication than others. Software developers, that's a big thing. Like you get a job for Google, you get put on a team working on a project, you're probably going to have teammates in San Francisco, Hamburg, Germany, Accra, and Beijing. That's the places where Accra and Ghana. Accra or Adra? I always forget. The capital of Ghana. That's where Google has their biggest presence. So if you work for Google and get put on a team, you probably have teammates in those places. So there's some standard symbols for these things. This is a symbol for database. I've heard it's supposed to look like the stack of reel-to-reel tapes, those are great big reels, but it was seriously outdated by the time this came around. So maybe you think of it as like a stack of markets, but a stack of disk is database. RAM is a square block. So RAM and ROM and volatile storage, the standard symbol for that is a square. I guess CPU, I could do that here. So what we doing? The standard symbol for processing is a little bit, it's a square block, but it has double lines on the side. You'll learn those on your way through school. And software developers might do a lot of international communication, but if you do an IT support in one office, you're probably not going to do very much international communication. So everybody sees it to different degrees, but there is a standard on how we diagram things. So you also, way through your IT program, you will do lots of diagrams, put lots of practice into those, because a lot of people on the way through class think those are trivial or something. Remember, our world is interconnected. So that diagram isn't for the people that speak the same language. So practice those, because that's for when you have to explain it to somebody that in a completely different language. It probably never happens in English, but open up an instruction manual, and I'll use that as an example because we're Americans. You open up an instruction manual for a new device, and there's no English section in there. I guess IKEA, that happens with furniture at IKEA, uses people a lot. But there's diagrams. People can follow the diagrams, and I guess that's why that's become the standard joke, because people don't speak Swedish, but they can follow the picture, or they think they can follow the picture when they start out. So don't take those lightly on your way through your IT program. Try to get good practice at that, because diagrams will play an important purpose. So like, 110 volts AC coming in, converted to DC, or coming from a battery maybe. What else do I have on here? Oh, keyboard. Need some other inputs. So another register over here is getting the bits from the keyboard. Mouse. I guess that looks like a mouse. Feeding into another register, and notice the working instructions. So the bits we send from the keyboard feed into one of our registers, and then from that register it loads back into RAM, so that the software that is currently running knows what symbol came from the keyboard. Those also have an interrupt. Those get priority, so they get like special registers. I'll put a little I here, because when we move our mouse to go click on something, we don't want to wait till the computer finishes what it's doing, right? We get priority, so our input devices will interrupt anything else that's happening. As soon as a bit flows into the mouse register, that immediately loads and flows over to RAM, along with the message of stop whatever you're doing, to make sure that the human gets priority. And not just because we're the intelligent ones and the machines won't mind if we interrupt them. Sometimes we have to do that to stop something that went wrong, right? Click in the wrong spot. We got to close out of it as quickly as possible. Maybe one more in the picture. Then a network interface card. I don't think that was on the list yesterday. The other day, was it? I'm not sure how to draw this. I'll try to draw an Ethernet plug. Oh, try that. Network interface connector. I think I just said card when I said. Or the NIC. Everybody just calls them NICs. We usually go by acronyms, but over the years I find it's a lot easier to remember the words as much as we can. and the words are useful because there's so many acronyms, they will blend together after a while. You're just looking at big sets of capital letters all the time. It's easy to forget which one's which. An Ethernet plug there. We didn't see one of those the other day. Let me grab one. Actually, we can look at that after a break. That was the rest of what I had on the picture. See how that again goes together? And it's not in the same form from any of those devices we took apart the other day. It's put in a form to try to convey information. So diagrams and schematics are very, very important. And please don't take them lightly on your way to school because that's not for people that speak the same language as you. Think of IKEA furniture, where you have to put it together based off the picture alone. Somebody else is going to have to do that with the diagrams you make. But probably good to have for a break. I'll look at an Ethernet cable. We'll do that after a break. 10 minutes sound good to everybody? I see big head nods here in the class. So my laptop says 2:06. We will get back to it at 2:16.